right, let's bring in Newt Gingrich, Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House, former GOP presidential candidate as well. Good morning to you.
The ninth wonder of the world, Newt Gingrich,
That's right,
folks.
that's right. Newt, tell us, what is the significance of this trip?
Well, it means a lot of different things. First of all, there are a very substantial number of Indian Americans who are very successful and who, I think, in economic grounds, lean Republican. And so the president is sending a signal of friendship to the country they came from. I think, second, it is an offset to China. India will pass China in the near future as the most populated country in the world. It's the natural counterweight in Asia. These are the two giant countries on the Asian continent. And I think having a good, close relationship. And Modi, in many ways, is very similar to Trump. He's very entrepreneurial. When he was the governor of Gujarat, he did an amazing job of encouraging high-tech companies and really raising the standard of living. And so the two of them together, in many ways, have a lot in common in terms of their vision of the future of their countries. India is obviously very, very different from us. But nonetheless, Modi's trying to modernize it, trying to bring it into a more aggressive economic stance. And I suspect they'll have very practical conversations.
You know, the president brought up, too, his personal story, and that is that he was working at his dad's tea shop and was able to work his way up, and now he's running the country to show that there is, after years of being a caste system, they are showing how they're modernizing, giving everyone, in theory, the opportunity to be successful and rise to the top. That's what democracy is supposed to do. Something else stands out. First ever military exercises took place in the fall between India and the U.S. Newt, I sense it won't be the last.
No, I don't think so. The Indians are very concerned. The Chinese have made inroads in Sri Lanka, where they loaned them a lot of money and they couldn't pay it back, so they gave the Chinese a naval base. The Indians deeply are concerned that they do not want the Indian Ocean to become like the South China Sea, an area that the Chinese can operate in. And I think the Indians are very interested in being able to operate with us to ensure that we could, if we had to, defeat any Chinese incursion into the Indian Ocean.
All right, Newt, let's switch gears to domestic politics, and in particular the race on the Democratic side for the who will be the standard bearer on the Democratic side. Right now, it looks like Bernie Sanders. You know, he's got a head of steam right now after having won, for the most part, Iowa, New Hampshire, and then Nevada by a sizable amount over the weekend. We're going to talk a little bit about Bernie Sanders and his self-described democratic socialist, but here's let's get in the Wayback Machine. Let's go back about 40 years, where then President Ronald Reagan talks a little bit, actually this is before he was president, Ronald Reagan talks about socialism and the dangers of it. Listen.
Speaking to some students the other day, I referred to freedoms lost in this land during my lifetime. And I got a question. What freedoms? What was I talking about? It reminded me of a TV play I'd once done in which I played a Soviet major during the occupation of Budapest. In the play, I turned out to be something of a nice fellow and let two Hungarians go with this line: "I never knew what freedom was until I saw you lose yours."
Is that what people have to worry about if a democratic socialist is president of the United States, that I never knew what freedom was until I saw you lose yours?
Well, look, I think that the number one characteristic of socialism is it fails. I mean, Bernie Sanders doesn't want to talk about it, but Venezuela, Cuba, Zimbabwe, these are places that tried socialism and they were total disasters. He would like to pretend that he would be a Scandinavian socialist, but there are no Scandinavian socialists. Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Norway are very capitalist countries. They have a large welfare state, but they're not socialist in any realistic way.
You know,
and it's a little hard to know exactly what he would do. You know, just take, for example, his promise that he would eliminate 148 million private health insurance. I think if you're a person who has health insurance, you have to ask yourself, do you really want Sanders health care rather than what you currently have?
Newt, there's a few things that he keeps offering more and more free stuff. He's going to pay off everyone's college debt. He's going to offer free college. And yesterday he rolls out free preschool from 0 to 4 for the entire country. When asked, how do you pay for it? He says, we'll tax the rich. How much will it cost? How much are you taxing? We'll work it out. I mean, how does he get away with this?
Now, look. You have to think of Bernie Sanders and AOC as being similar people. They talk in visionary terms that have no factual meaning, but they are emotionally powerful. And they basically go around chanting slogans as though they were real. Sanders could never deliver on the things he's promising, but frankly, to his followers, they don't care. I mean, he at least offers them hope. He's exciting. They have this vision. I mean, after all, imagine that you could spend your entire lifetime living off other people. And I think that's what Sanders is offering.
Yeah.
You know, vote for me, and I'll guarantee that somebody else will pay for you for your whole lifetime. It's not realistic. But as we saw in Nevada, when the Culinary Union took him on, they lost. I think he carried 7 out of 8 of the precincts in the Culinary Union.
Which is
so
crazy. They're voting to get rid of their health care.
Here.
They're voting to get rid of their Cadillac health care plans. It's nuts.
Right. No, but it tells you, and this is very similar to AOC, the radical wing of the Democratic Party, which frankly, I'm working on a book that lays out that there are at least 200 radicals in the House who pretend not to be. But you look at their voting record, you look at the bills they're sponsoring. The Democratic Party today is a radical socialist party. And the key to it is it makes you feel good. It's a variation, frankly, on drug addiction. You know, you can go home and you can sit back and say, oh, this is going to be wonderful. Now, you could look at how the Democrats screwed up the Iowa caucus and ask yourself, can a party which can't hold a caucus run the entire national health system? But that gets back to facts. And what you're seeing here is the counterfactual party. The Democrats don't want to think about facts. They want to deal in two things. I hate Trump, and everything's possible because I'm going to give it to you and some rich guy's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's the essence of the current Democratic Party.
Here's another soundbite from Ronald Reagan from 43 years ago, saying that socialists ignore man's spirit. Listen.
Socialists ignore the side of man that is of the spirit. They can provide shelter, fill your belly with bacon and beans, treat you when you're ill, all the things that are guaranteed to a prisoner or a slave. They don't understand that we also dream. Yes, even of sometime owning a yacht.
And if not a
Heaven
yacht,
forbid.
3 houses.
Right.
Yes, and a camp.
You know, look, this puts this in context. There was a report yesterday that 1 out of every 3 people in Venezuela is going hungry.
Yep.
Now, they don't feel, you know, in that sense, I would say Reagan underestimated the power of socialism to destroy society and to destroy economies. I mean, Venezuela 20 years ago had a growing middle class, was a very prosperous country, was actually working as the largest oil reserve in the world, and socialism destroyed the entire economy. And I think Sanders, this is going to be a very important debate this fall. And in a way, if the Democrats do nominate Sanders, it'll let the American people confront reality and have 2 really big choices. Do you want an economy that works with the lowest unemployment rate in recent history, or do you want to take a wild gamble on a guy who thought that honeymooning in the Soviet Union made sense?
Right. And
that alone should slow them down.
They got 1 week to stop him. They got Tuesday's debate and Saturday's primary and Super Tuesday. If he does well on Saturday, hard to imagine him not running the table on Super Tuesday. So, Democrats, if you have a counter-argument, let's hear it.
But then the question becomes, so who's his vice presidential nominee?
Yeah, I know. Broker
and my
convention?
guess is it'll be a radical.
Broker convention?
I don't know, not at the rate they're going right now. I thought they might have one, but Bloomberg was so pathetic the other night. I don't think his ads can cover up how bad he was.
Well, he gets another chance tomorrow night to be just as bad or even much better, so we'll all be too excited.
Who do you think will be his vice president? Elizabeth Warren?
It could be Elizabeth Warren. It could be AOC. Is she old enough?
Nope.
She has to be 35.
You got to be
No, she's not.
No,
I think she's
she
29.
can't get it yet. So, you know.
Stay
They're
tuned.
just cheated by the reality of life.
There you go. That old life gets in the way sometimes for all of us.
By the way, my advice to Bloomberg: spend the day watching Trump's debates in 2016.
Absolutely.
Trump would have mopped the floor the other night, you know, and Bloomberg was a punching bag. This is why Trump always counterpunches. You're never going to get a free shot at Trump.
Right.
He's going to come at you as hard as he can. And Bloomberg was like a little kid who suddenly showed up, and the playground people weren't nice to him.
Never defended himself.
And no boxes.
All right. Newt Gingrich, thank you very much for joining us live.
Thank you.
Glad to be with you.